I'm going to read from Volume 4 of Annotations for the History of the Classical Guitar in Argentina, 1822 to 2000, written by myself and Hector Garcia Martinez. Today I'm going to read an interview he did on October 12, 1980 with Atahualpa Yupanqui. Interview with Atahualpa Yupanqui by Hector Angel Garcia, Hector Garcia Martinez, when he was a correspondent for the program Diálogo on Radio Tabare in Salta, Uruguay, owned and operated by Herman Cincunegui. Hector. Hello, Herman. Good evening, everyone. Today I have for the audience of Diálogo the enormous privilege to put us in contact with a unique artist, a person who has let us learn through his teachings not only what he has investigated, but also about where he has been, and by his contact with the customs of the small towns, things he has translated through his unique art that give us the true sense of our nationality and the American continental being. I'm referring to the maestro Atahualpa Yupanqui, that today on Diálogo we will have a brief conversation with him. Hector. Good evening, Maestro Atahualpa. Good evening, sir. I'm glad to see you and to listen to you. Hector. I would like, more or less, since you've just returned from Europe a little while ago, for you to give me a summary of where you've been, where were the performances you had in Argentina, and what ones you will have here in the future. Atahualpa. Well, I can tell you for 12 years now I've been traveling to that old Europe, today in a lot of conflict, so full of rarities and commitments of diverse order. My job is simpler, to play the guitar and make sure the people understand something of our sensibilities and traditions. Musically, in my capacity, I'm a traditionalist. I like the traditions a lot. I like it when people don't ask me, for example, what did you bring that's brand new? But I bring the old, because I live to delve into old Vidalitas, Vidalas, Triunfos, Zambas, Estilos of the Pampas, of the grassland, until where it helps the memory or I'm discovering subject matter of a long time ago, and that makes me happy more than to have composed a Zamba last week, which interests me less. Now in Europe I did many things. I live in Paris, but I don't play there much. I play in all of France. In the south of France, in Marseille. I play in Toulouse, the city where Carlos Gardel was born. I play in Grenoble, in the west near the Pyrenees, in the Alps. I play in Salzburg, in Lyon, Normandy, in Brittany, and every year I give 5 or 6 concerts in the city of Paris. No more, 5 or 6 a year. That is to say, I don't want to abuse the hospitality of the city that received me. Where I live is where I play the least. But instead I have Switzerland, I have Italy, I have quite a bit in Spain, Barcelona, Madrid, Palma de Mallorca in the Basque country, Santander, Galicia. But every year I make 1 or 2 trips and a lot in Switzerland, as well in Belgium. And from there I go to Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Japan. And I make a trip there and I return to Paris. But before that, I make a trip to Argentina. I come twice a year to my homeland to see my family, to look at my landscapes, to chat with my compatriots, and to fill myself of that eternal vibration that is to tread on the national land, the land I love and where he was born. And that is all, sir. Hector, Maestro, given your vast activity, your knowledge of the customs and popular traditions of Argentina, there has been a question that I've wanted to ask you for a long time. And when would you come here? It had to be thought of. A few months ago, I was with some friends and various aficionados of folklore in a congress that was held in Casa Museo de Ricardo Rojas, there in Calle Charcas, 2837 Charcas Street, 2837. In this city. Casually, one theme of discussion was linked to the traditions, many sustained and others not, assuring to the contrary that due to the advance of the means of communication, radio, and television, the anonymous singers were going to disappear and that it would extinguish our traditions. What is your opinion in that respect? That happened a while ago here. Hector, exactly 7 months ago. Atahualpa. It's very new. Very recently we can say in all that time tradition, no. Many years have to pass, many moons to be old, right? Well, those people who have conversed or have been worried over the possibility haven't completely lost their way. I scarcely a certain pessimism that I see growing. I had thought the same thing as well several years ago, in the measure that people don't study in a manner that could be exact and get heavily involved in the study of anonymous traditions, in the folklore that is plural and anonymous. The folklore belongs to nobody and it belongs to all of us, over all to our great-grandfathers, and in the proportion that we deserve, it belongs to us if we deserve it. To deserve it, we can't put leaves of plastic on our tree with the leaves of centuries. We can't put leaves of plastic to our ombu, large tree that grows in the pampas, on the pampas grasslands, neither on our algarrobo, typical leguminous tree of northwest Argentina, very abundant in the province of Santiago del Estero. Algarrobo is a tree that's used to make back and sides of guitars, very common in Argentina and probably elsewhere in South America. It's worth saying we don't incorporate ignoble things lightly, or you won't value an old tradition. We can't do it. Then understood. The folklore can disappear when the anonymous singers or an anonymous thing might disappear. It is very possible that it's lost. It wasn't diffused because it didn't even have the diffusion of folklore in our country. The aspect of the diffusion of the criolla, of the native criollas, the Argentine compositions with the sufficient criollo flavor, criollo originally meaning all the sons of Spain born in the Americas during the colonial period. Later and until the present day, it signifies various native generations. With enough flavor, emotion, and the comarcano color relating to the place comarca. For example, they create things very Saltanian, native to those born in the province of Salta in northwest Argentina. Very Tucumanian, native to the province of Tucumán in northwest Argentina. Very Mendocinian, native to the province of Mendoza in west Argentina, pertaining to the zone of Cuyo, and very Interranian, natives of the province of Entre Rios, in the zone of Mesopotamia. But they're not folkloric. Folklore is anonymous. That's what Adolfo Salazar said. It is sustained by Ortega y Gasset, and sustained by Ventura Lynch, and as well by Maestro Carlos Vega in our land. Folklore is what the people learn without anyone having taught them. It is learned because it's worth saying. A lasso that is a folkloric effect. It is the prolongation of the yearning of a man that wants to catch a colt, a llama, or wild animal. That is a lasso. That is a prolongation of the yearning. Now the lasso that the Casa Rodriguez and Rodriguez sell, that isn't folklore. It can be a great lasso, very well done, finely woven, right? And well greased, well stretched, and very well done. Of 12 braids with 3 at the end of the lasso, and a good rope, and a good metal ring. It can be famous and prestigious, but it isn't folkloric. It's done with the systematized knowledge. Instead, those lassos that Don Leonardo did, for example, in the 82 of Tandil, province of Buenos Aires, it was famous in 8 leagues, and it went around and it stretched from tree to tree, and they treated it with fresh cow manure. That is a folkloric lasso, because it was done in the year 2 and in 10 years 6, because it wasn't dedicated to making lassos. When there was a time to make a lasso or a braided whip, it was braided of 4 and of 8 calfskin ropes. And if someday by thanks to the doctor that saved that boy, he had to make a small button for the corralera, type of shirt worn by gauchos. He made a button of feathers, and it was a jewel, a real gem. He didn't live. To have dedicated himself to make feather buttons of the standard type. He made one far away there, and then we are facing a work and a spectacular of a theme, of a producer of folkloric artifacts of unsurpassable quality. Then if that is lost, such is the loss of the feather button. Someone will do it, but we don't have news, giving the impression that the inhabitant had lost it. The popular song, the dance that may have been lost, it's possible that it may be becoming lost and that it will disappear, that we will call the author anonymous, because now all the authors have an intention, sincerely commercial, as we might put it. All men who compose a zamba would like to gain the author's rights, but in the measure that they composed their zambas and chacareras, traditional Argentine folk dance typical of the province of Santiago del Estero, escondidos, baguales, slow sad song that the inhabitants of the Calchaquí Valley in Salta and the Quebrada de Humahuaca in the province of Jujuy, northwest Argentina. The song is accompanied by a calfskin drum known as a caja. Vidalas, right? Chayeras, Vidalas, Chayeras, happy songs of the province of La Rioja, principally sung during the days of the carnival, that are called Chayeras. Playing in a rushed manner, they are called Chayeras, and it's not such. It's not such that the Chayera doesn't need the hurriedness, and I don't know any Riojano, a native of the province of La Rioja, who rushes it. Laughter. And when they play Chayeras, they don't have time to breathe. Not the drummer on the bombo, neither any guitarist nor the singer. They believe that it is the carnival. Lie. It is not certain. Nothing is rushed in the provinces. Everything is genuine expression, severe, serious. Our countryman is serious to the point when he will play because a thing is to be played and another is to be clowning around. Our criollo, never since our country was born until now, never has been a clown, although they had been, and so they were considered to be more of one. Now, the Argentine song, because it didn't occur to us in our youth to take seriously the 80 dances of the province of Buenos Aires and the 2,000 estilos and cifras. Do you know why? Because there are very serious musical elements that don't draw frenetic and massive applause. They don't draw it. Not any cifra provokes frenetic applause, but if it was a carnavalito, the finale of a famous zamba or an intended chacarera and lightly stinging and a lot of bombo, bass drum, that can rapidly awaken the consequence of a cordial and sympathetic applause. Instead, that of the province of Buenos Aires isn't, because our countryman, to the point of his manner of dressing, when he worked in the corrals, through this medium he used clothes that got dirty called batarazas, typical light gray pants of the farming region, a genre lightly ordinary, easy to wash and put on because it was work clothes. But when they were to endomingaba, to put on Sunday's best, they dressed in black and influence of our Castellania, inheritance of the zone of Castilla in Spain. It was severe and serious, from the sombrero to the spurs. It was serious and serious. It was severe and serious. And so it was in their music, their manner of greeting, as in their way of drinking, to never be an alcoholic our countryman of the province of Buenos Aires, drank his gin and his wine, but never was an alcoholic. He was a sober gentleman, some with fortune and others without anything. Some with fortune and others without anything. Although it can't be said that it was without, he who, since the horse dominated the pampas, the grasslands, the landscape of La Pampa, he had a lot already, right? He had a lot. Then to resume what you were communicating to me, the preoccupation of those gentlemen reunited in the Casa de Ricardo Rojas. One can detract in a certain way from the destiny of the national song. It can be debased if it doesn't reach the conscience of the singer, that has more ambition than ability and looks more to the society of authors that is the imperial of its own Argentine conscience. But I don't believe in any way that sometime the song might disappear. The anonymous man might disappear. That singer, that silent worker, that minstrel of the pampas of the north, of the littoral, it could disappear by the means of the advance of technology, and in the same measure that he will learn to read and write and think, because generally it is the fruit of the illiterate, the popular song, the literature generally of that time. One didn't have to analyze it, but feel it, receive it, and regard it as such, as popular literature. I don't believe it will disappear. I hope not. I expect that God won't permit a tremendous happening. The popular song has to follow in spite of the disorientation that many people have, that love the song, that love the guitars, that love the land, but still haven't reached to divide, to establish the borders between their desires to be manifested and the conscience to break their ambitions. To that point it appears to me, and forgives me if I exceeded. Hector, in no way, Maestro. We continue conversing with Maestro Atahualpa Yupanqui. Maestro, Hector says, giving you knowledgeable words that have left a mountain of teachings, and I am tremendously touched by all that you have just told me and the audience of Dialogo that is going to receive you. There is a question that I think is pointed and is going to serve as an example to many people by what your opinion is, and it deals with declaring the difference that there is between the interpreter of folklore and the folklorist. What is it to be a folklorist? What does it require? Atahualpa Yupanqui says, well, the folklore we just said a while ago is all of what people learn without anyone having taught them. There is no system. There isn't a little book to learn from. The folklore isn't learned from a little book. One learns it, from example, from what is written, of which there is a lot that's important. Reading of our people and our maestros, Adolfo Salazar. I'm going to show you a picture of Adolfo Salazar. Here's a musicologist who did an incredible amount of research, published books. Adolfo Salazar was a very knowledgeable Spanish gentleman with a doctorate in musicology in a time when he was to live in Mexico. He was a man, he died in Mexico 15 years ago, which would be roughly 1965. He was one of those men who traveled the world and knew folklore, ethnology, archaeology, and popular music of the working man and minstrels. He knew everything we would have wanted to know, and that we never reached that level of knowledge. This photo I just showed you of Adolfo Salazar is from the Música y Músicos de Latin America by Otto Mayer Serra, published by Editorial Atlante, Mexico City in the year 1947. How much that Spaniard knew, Atahualpa continues. How much he studied. He studied as a student and not as a maestro. As those maestros say, I already know, and they adorn the books, and that he lived to consult, and consulting others may be intellectually inferior to him, but if he could find a small road of interpretation, Adolfo Salazar. It was he that said, "Bless that pilgrim of the desert." He wasn't a man of the Saharan desert, but those deserts that you find on the edge of the desert there in Africa, the skeleton of a camel who died of thirst and fell to the sand and rid himself of, or was missing a molar, and discovered the first note in the jawbone of a camel in the desert. It's worth saying that it initiated the first knowledge, the first notice in 1,000 years of what later was to be called the ocarina, musical instrument. There always will be someone who would make fun of it, claim someone had made the whole. It already had 2 notes, and so they're going to be making the ocarina according to him, right? I have studied the ancient music of the Arames, the Egyptians, of the Chaldeans. That is the knowledge that comes from quite a distance with an enormous capacity of assimilation. Next, Isabel Aretz-Theile is an Argentine of German ancestry, but is an Argentine. Isabel Aretz is married to Felipe Ribera. Felipe Ribera is a great folklorist of 70 years of age in the Institute of Investigations in Caracas, Venezuela. She got married to Felipe and had joined a pair of folklorists, that is to say, expert in folklore. Here's a picture of Isabel Aretz-Theile. This is from the book Música y Músicos de Latin America by Otto Mayer Serra, published by Editorial Atlante, Mexico City in 1947. Atahualpa continues. He plays the guitar a little, and she plays the piano. She studied the piano very well, violin, harmony, counterpoint here in the National Conservatory of Buenos Aires. But her capacity of assimilation and investigation is very vast. She has covered in her travels Europe, Egypt, verifying, annotating, questioning. She is fearless whatever the hour. She is a woman advanced in years, is now old. She's over 70 years and is heavy set, and her body is large. She mustn't be in great health, but she never judged anyone. Before that, she aspired to the early morning in the library, whatever library from Calcutta to Washington and from Caracas to Commodore Rivadavia in southern Argentina in the zone of Patagonia, to review, to observe, to learn, to verify. That is very important. That famous advice, turn your light out late if you're going to be someone. That is what Isabel Aretz-Theile followed. And in our country, Carlos Vega, Don Ventura Lynch, Don Domingo Lombardi, Fausto Burgos, Maximiliano Marquez Larralde in Tucumán, Roberto de Vega in La Rioja province, Joaquin V. Gonzalez in La Rioja, Ricardo Vera Vallejo in La Rioja, Honorable Riojans, Gudinho Kramer in Santa Fe, Draghi Lucero in Mendoza. Here's a picture of Carlos Vega that he just mentioned. This photo is from Música y Músicos de Latin America by Otto Mayer Serra, published by Editorial Atlante, Mexico City in 1947. Hector mentions Ortiz Odorigo as well. Yes, Ortiz Odorigo, that also dedicated in a special manner to study the music of Africa, of the Negro. Odorigo began to publish with Arthur Ramos of Brazil, The Life of the Negroes. Arthur Ramos gave us data which to me resulted in being very important. Later when I got involved studying Abyssinian things, for example, that of the 82 different races of Negroes of Africa, 70 are Semitic. Then there's certain tenacity in the maintenance of ancestral rituals. They had some justification because they were rituals. Then that opens for us a road to the curiosities. I am studious as well as curious of those things. I have an infinite curiosity. I stay up late at night. I stayed up late to satisfy my curiosity because I don't have a scientific capacity. I am of a temperament to be of service to the things our nation and even further away. Why did I study the things that are somewhat universal? To see if I could be at least useful where I was born, where I live, nothing more, right? Now that I concretely refer to when I say how it is going as the Argentine destiny of our knowledge is of folklorists and folklore, one man knows 20 zambas, 10 chacareras, 40 vidalas, 8 estilos, and 23 milongas. He is a singer, a worker, and an artist if he has the artistic insomnia. He is an interesting man. But you can't say folklorist if he has ignored folklore. If he has ignored that, if he hasn't systematically studied the difference between folklore and popular, between popular and collective, the things of folklore are anonymous, that has a name but are without authorship. Caminito del Indio isn't folklore. It's by Yupanqui. It's a song he recorded in the 1940s. Now El Condor Pasa that Alomas Robles picked up in Cuzco, Peru, 60 years ago. El Condor Pasa, very well internationally known song, comes from a distant epic. It is a folkloric element, a folkloric work that he had retrieved. Later, as it was very beautiful, it circuited Europe, and that melody passed around there and came out with not fewer than 72 authors. The whole world seized upon it as if the prestige had legs. Over there is a Mr. Wismer in Paris that is a co-author, and as he brought without a dispute, then they arrived at a settlement of 50% for him and 50% for the descendants of Robles. Another author came out with a film for Paramount and had inserted El Condor Pasa. A third author, that's going to get 22%. Here in Argentina, another wanted to derive a little bit, so he wrote some lyrics because that isn't a verse that as it appears. Just a few words, but he'll get 5% or 10%. When the young woman is very pretty, suitors come from everywhere. Now there is a thing that lacks dignity and of sobriety and probity in the elements that comes close to notable works and famous South American songs. The people must feel honored with the playing of Zamba de Vargas, very honored, but it mustn't ever occur to add some words, to get close to a little recitation. That is to say, it'll be good to see if I can get 5% of what can be derived from that. I believe in whatever language of the world it can be called immorality. Hector. We continue conversing on Dialogo with Maestro Atahualpa Yupanqui. Maestro, if you had to name 2 poets and 2 musicians of the Rio de la Plata, who would you be inclined to choose? For example, you knew Abel Fleury. Abel Fleury, yes, I knew him. Abel Fleury died more than several years ago, but for me, it's like he never died. He was in my home. Abel, I spent Christmas many times with him. He was a single man, concentrated, very well educated, very studious of the guitar, and very intelligent. An active intelligence, active and nervous. Every day he was with general literature besides with the guitar, right? Many times at Christmas we spent time together, many times. He was a good friend. We played guitar together. One day his throat became diseased and it went bad, and it appeared he began to be sick of something, and no one wanted to speak of the bad shade upon humanity, cancer. And it was quite a few years ago, in spite of the fact that he lived on Calle Esperanza. This interview was taken in 1980. Abel Fleury died in 1958, some 22 years beforehand. He was a great guitarist. The tone Abel had has still not been surpassed by many of the popular guitarists in Argentina. The tone of Abel was a big sound, ample. The basses, when he played over the basses on his Pampiana pieces, he had a kind of a violoncello sound, vibrato like that of cello, very round and deep, extensive, serious, full of density and with a message. Great guy, that Abel Fleury. Abel Fleury owned 2 guitars made by Francisco Simplicio. He used one of these in 1935 in a movie. I've got it in my book. I forget the name of the movie, but it's something that you can see on YouTube. Great composer. Yes, a great composer. Everything he had about Los Pájaros, the Sobre Tarde, those estilos, overall his estilos. The Milonga Ausencia, the first recording he did in 1935. Yes, the milongas, he had various milongas. The Milonga del Ayer, very beautiful song. Yes, the Milonga del Ayer, Milongeo del Ayer. He had very beautiful things, Abel, very beautiful. And after, among the musicians that I like very much at times, it makes me sad when I return here year after year and I see they haven't joined 40 together for a dinner to offer a guitarist and say to that guitarist, we love you very much, keep it up. That thing that stimulates appears to be nonsense, right? But it encourages. For one guy that scores a goal in soccer, they have 27 banquets because he scored a goal. And for the guy that decently writes Argentine music for 40 years, they say, hi, how's it going, Don Carlitos, sometime when they see him in the street. Here's a picture of Abel Fleury, great guitarist. It was his songs in 1976 recorded on LP by Roberto Lara that I heard. It changed my life. I said, oh wow, Argentine music, man. Sounds like 3 people playing at the same time. I was a blues and jazz player up until that time. Robert Johnson, Lightning Hopkins, Johnny Smith, Joe Pass without the lead guitar stuff. It says, Abel Fleury with a dedication to my friend Segundo Contreras with much affection. Signed, Abel Fleury, Buenos Aires, May 22nd, 1950. I got a small Segundo Contreras collection out of the 12 archives I acquired to write the book. 17 years of writing. Annotations for the history of the classical guitar in Argentina, 1822 to 2000. This is volume 4. All 4 volumes weigh 21 pounds. To continue, Atahualpa says Carlos Guastavino, a musician of serious capacity and intelligent, and that had honored popular music, having the abilities or another type of music, that is to say, chamber music. He made a serious contribution, intelligent, perfect for the popular music, not seen in many years. Getting around, I've seen him here. He goes to Santa Fe, then comes here, right? He's completely busy. He's restless. He lives creating, say, beautiful things on his piano and in his conducting. And even his neighbors don't hold dinners in his honor. To me, that's a shame. I know that he doesn't live of cheap vanities. No one dignified that loves and treasures dignity lives of cheap vanities. But the others that they see, those that are, don't move to it, to that side. It may be because he's not mentioned successively on television. It may be because he's not mentioned successfully on the radio stations. You have to be mentioned on television to be a man worth something. To me, that appears to be even better, of course, much better, of course, because to be named on television and radio to many people no one can ever see. By so saying, forgive me for speaking, paisanamente, sincerely and spontaneously. Hector says, that's quite fine. Atahualpa continues. It's been a while since I saw Guastavino, some 4 years since. I've given him a hug. But I took advantage of the moment in his conversation to tell him that permanently he has the homage of my respect and of my congeniality and of my friendship, although I might not see him ever. But in my home, I mention him almost daily. And I want to thank you for having given me the opportunity to say name people. There's one, Abel Fleury, that is in silence, that went to the silence, and the other who walks in silence in Buenos Aires. Hector, Maestro, to close and not abuse any more of your kindness, I would like, as a brooch of gold of all of that, this program goes out to all of Uruguay, and as you have composed with the great poet of Uruguay, who is Ramildo Riso, I ask you to speak a little bit about the poetry of Uruguay. Atahualpa. Well, Ramildo Riso is a forgotten one in his land. He died 30 years ago, circa 1950, and has been forgotten. To me, what they said last night, conversing so with musicians, they told me, look, that in Uruguay, Riso is unknown. And I don't miss him. I don't miss him. Sarcasm. The people live forgetting their most profound responsibilities. They live to be forgetful. Heroes aren't the only ones who win battles in the heat of battle. Heroes are also those who win battles against ignorance and lack of culture. Those are truly heroes, those that go on to triumph, illuminating the path of the generations that arrive in a country, of the new little trees that grow. They are good winds and good suns to develop the plants and to produce noble fruits, or the noble shade sometime, right? Speaking of people being forgotten, I looked up Ronoel Simoes, who in the mid-50s had his photo and biography in Japanese, in hiragana, katakana, and kanji, in the Harmonia magazine, published in Japan. And I looked him up in katakana the other day, is the phonetic use of foreign words. And so I looked it up in Google, and there's nothing. So he was very known. 1955, he passed away 10 years ago, had the world's largest record collection, now housed in Brazil by the Brazilian government. They paid $100,000 for the record collection of over 8,000 discs. This is the man who, everybody in the world who's ever heard Agustin Barrios, he collected those records from 1943. Now he's forgotten in Japan. Those Barrios discs became Maestro LPs by Rico Stover, became Chanterelle Publication CDs. I even contributed in 2009 to the repagination of the discography of Barrios due to my acquisitions of unfound Barrios pieces for Chanterelle. And then Riso was one of those people. He was a good wind and a good sun to many generations, not only Argentinians, Rio Platenses, inhabitants of the Rio de la Plata area, and a little more further away. Riso was an expert, not only of the gaucho subject, but also of the conduct and position of the man, confronting misfortune, confronting the contrariness, facing the clouds or the good morning of tomorrow. When a man loves the sun, he sincerely says, if that isn't beautiful, then I don't know what is. Well, that was his manner to speak, which was his manner to speak. He had told me many times, do you realize that there are many people that say paisana, to speak sincerely and spontaneously, that say gaucho, that say folklorist, and they don't believe that to write in gaucho with writing in guarango, stupid gross, and say in ordinary that's it. And they are very mistaken. You have to know the Spanish language very well. You have to profoundly know Cervantes. You have to know the grammar to not be mistaken. Their prosodic accent to not be mistaken, or to not err, nor to do what's been done by the mistaken lecturers, possible admirers. The word he hated was admirer. When the people told him, I'm an admirer of yours, he turned away and left in a rush. No, he didn't like whatever manner of vanity. He was a man of truth, the man with a capital M. And among the Uruguayan storytellers, there is Jose Morosoli in the city of Minas, Department of Lavallea, who had published El Albañil de las Tapes, Hombre, then Javier de Viana before him, Leandro Epuche, A Mountain of People, Canarios, natives of the department of Canelones, Uruguay, whose founders were from the Canary Islands of Spain, Maragatos, those born in the local of San Jose de Mayo, Uruguay. Uruguay has given us good poets, among them famous with the image of fireworks, audacious and beautiful, Yamando Rodriguez, very famous, and some intelligent followers such as Osiris Rodriguez Castillos. Uruguay has given us good poets. Elderly Silva Valdez, with his good contribution that I don't believe to have been fundamental, the contribution of Silva Valdez, but yes, in this moment, interesting and good. What he lacked was a little bit more of modesty and a little more culture, that is to say, information of the universal literature that many other Uruguayans have. To that point, I believe we can attain. Hector, Maestro, I don't know how to thank you for this beautiful moment that you have made happen, and will be going out to the friends of Dialogo when they hear your words. I thank you infinitely, and I only ask to have listened, after having listened to you, is that I hope that we have more Atahualpa Yupanquis with fewer debts, right? Thank you. And until another time, until the following Sunday, Herman, until the next Sunday, family, this is Hector Angel Garcia, Hector Garcia Martinez, exclusive correspondent of Dialogo in the city of Buenos Aires, that has held this conversation with Maestro Atahualpa Yupanqui. Thanks, until next Sunday. This interview with Atahualpa Yupanqui was done in his home on the date indicated on Calle San Benito del Palermo, 1655, 8th floor, Buenos Aires, Argentina. I used to buy Atahualpa Yupanqui LPs in 1980. Around the time this interview was done, I would buy a couple LPs. I didn't understand Spanish at the time, though I do now, but I could not believe his high quality guitar playing thirds intervals, sixth intervals while singing, and so I bought a couple LPs a year. It didn't matter that I didn't understand Spanish. I loved the guitar playing he played. Eventually became a collector of his 78s all the way from the 1940s, and those record labels are shown in the Atahualpa Yupanqui biography section in my book. Thank you, folks.